All right. Well, good afternoon, as it will be for almost everybody here. Um, I appreciate everybody joining us this morning. This is a, webinar format, so you'll probably notice that your uh, your microphones and your videos are off, and uh, that's so we can keep most of the attention on the presentation. The chat room is enabled, and so that means that if you uh, need to ask a question as we're going through this, you're welcome to post uh, uh, a question or something in the actual chat, and we'll try to answer chats when we get to the questions in the chat as we get to the end of the presentation. So with that said, we're going to get rolling. We have a few more who will likely join us, but um, we'll let them come in as they come in, and hopefully it'll work out just fine. I'll try to keep up with adding new people as they join us, at least over the first few minutes while we get started. So for those that I don't know, which is the vast majority, my name is David Srygley. I am the provost for Nations University and have been with Nations since about 2014, so a little over 11 years now, and have been the provost for the last 8 of those, and last 7 of those. And I have enjoyed my work here. My background, my doctorate is in educational ministries with emphasis in spiritual growth and evangelism, church growth, those kind of topics. I went to Southern Baptist Theological Seminary for that. I also have degrees from Abilene Christian University, Texas A&M, a couple from there, and a certificate in preaching from the Center for Christian Education in Irving, Texas, near Dallas. So I really enjoy what I do, and I like technology. I grew up on computers. I started doing programming when I was about 12 years old, I think, maybe earlier than that. Back in the days when everything was written in DOS programming. Some of you are probably too young to know what that is, but that's okay. I've been doing it a while, so I really enjoyed the technical side of the Nations University, and I enjoy the educational side, and I enjoy the ministry side. So this was a really good fit for me when this opportunity came along. So, but that's enough about me. You guys are interested in the questions about artificial intelligence, I am sure, and how that is going to play out in theological education. That's the point of this seminar. As you noted, it will be recorded, and hopefully when this is done, there will be a recording sent out automatically to everyone. If it's not automatic, then I will get to it as quick as I can. Uh, with that said, it's 5 after, and I've got a good lengthy presentation, and I want to allow time for the questions at the end as well. So we'll get rolling with what we have and hope for the best. Before we do that, let's have a quick prayer for this time and make sure God is with us as we consider this conversation. So if you'll bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank so much for the opportunity to be here, be together as students and as faculty, and to just explore what the world is doing in the world of artificial intelligence. We pray that you will give us wisdom in our use of artificial intelligence as we apply it to our educational endeavors, and especially as we apply it to theological research. We thank you for the great advances made each and every day, both in technology and medicine and everything else that allows the world to continue to thrive. And we pray that you'll use us in this world to make a difference in some way. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, with that, I am going to, if all goes well anyway, I'm going to share my screen with you. And I know I can share it. The question is always, will it advance like it's supposed to? That's always the challenge. So we have here the AI Theological Education, and it is hopefully will go well. So let me get started with some of the factors that are involved in artificial intelligence, and I think you'll see again, where the challenges are. Hold on, it's not advancing. There we go. In the world of AI literacy, there are several factors involved that we need to consider when using AI. It's not just a tool, it is a tool with context. And the context of the tool is the entire World Wide Web. And so that's something that is we need to keep in mind. So these AI literacy sections are really about what do we need to consider when we are considering the use of artificial intelligence. And this comes from a website called openedculture.org. And there's a reference down at the bottom if you want to write that down. There's a lot more about this on that website. But these are the areas in which they consider AI literacy to be, or AI literacy to be important in these areas. And so I'm just going to list them off here. We're going to look at some of these, but not all of them. I was very impressed as a preacher that they were able to get all of their points to start with a C. But you can see these things: cultural, cognitive, constructive, communicative, confident, creative, critical, and civic. All of these are different aspects of using artificial intelligence in anything, but especially in theological education. So the questions may arise: when and how do we use AI appropriately? Obviously, as professors, anytime we see a paper submitted that was written by artificial intelligence, and I mean written in its entirety, we are very concerned that someone has actually failed the very first assessment, and that is literacy, the cultural literacy. Are you using it in ways that it was never intended to be used? Cognitive, how do we see the students growing in their understanding of a subject matter, not just of AI usage, but of the subject itself? And so we want to look at that as a construct in this. And other ones, communicative, how are you using AI to present knowledge? We'll look at several of these, but again, not all of them. But please feel free to go to this website if you want to learn all about each one of these areas. But again, we're only going to focus on a couple of them. So the first one we're going to look at is cultural AI literacy, when and how to use AI appropriately. AI can be used for anything. Now, I know that you may hear professors write back, or you may hear people on the internet say, oh, AI cannot be used for everything. You can use AI for practically anything you want to use it for. That's the beauty of AI. But it can't be used for everything. Sounds a little contradictory, but what you can do is find any topic, anything you want about using AI, but then there's a transition point where you're going to try to use AI for something it was never intended to do. And that's why it can be used for anything, but it cannot be used for everything, certainly within that arena or that area of study. So that's awesome that it's so versatile, but it has limits, and that's really what that boils down to. And here they are. This list of limits are related to theological studies. They come from a paper written by Laker Zing, who is from the Association of Biblical Higher Education. And he says one of the things we have to realize is that AI, as great as it is, has limits to what it can produce. And these are some of the ones that he identifies. AI does not recognize absolute truth. As someone studying theology, studying the Bible, studying Christianity, there is a view, we believe that there is an absolute truth, and that absolute truth is God and the Word of God that is presented to us. AI does not have that. So when AI goes out to find information, questions, it doesn't care where the source is, what source it's from. Everything is true on the internet, and we all know that's not true. But there certainly is no absolute truth. There is no measure of truth in many of the AI's responses. They do assess and they can help you analyze information, but when it comes down to whether something is true or not, that decision has to come to the user of the AI. Again, AI's bias is towards secular, not spiritual. it is going to find much more information on the web that is not spiritual than it is going to find that is spiritual. And even when we look at spiritual, it is going to consider some things spiritual or perhaps metaphysical that we as Christians or in a religious context might say that's not really spiritual. That's moral, that's ethical, that's something, but it is not necessarily spiritual. So be aware that it will reach out to sources that we would not consider to be truly spiritual sources. AI, of course, has no soul or spirit. It's a fun thing to ask an AI agent, whatever you use, ChatGPT, whatever you use, what's one disadvantage of using AI for theological research? And this is almost always the first answer that you get is, hey, I don't have a soul. I don't have a spirit. So it understands its own limitation there. AI does not need a relationship with God. And so because it doesn't need a relationship with God, it can be much more, much less critical of the information that it's providing. It's just going to look at it and say, oh yeah, that looks good. And you're going to think to yourself, wow, that is not good at all. But it doesn't know any better. It doesn't need a relationship with God. It can't assess information from the standpoint of, is this really going to help me in a relationship with God? Just can't do it. AI cannot experience transformation. Of course, the study of spirituality is the goal of that is spiritual transformation. You can't transform AI. If AI ever reaches the point of transformation, then everything you saw from the Terminator movies will start coming true. So hopefully it will never reach that point where it can know what transformation is, because again, that'll be a scary time should it ever happen. So those are some of the limits that it has to in this area. Okay. AI can be used for more than we think, but we have to think. And I think that's one of the things that is important for us to convey in this webinar is you can use AI for all kinds of crazy things that you want to use it for, but you must think as you use it and when you get responses from it. And again, those will be some of the ideas that we're going to continue to talk about through the rest of this time together. Final note, AI is a tool, it's not a God. Some people are already treating it like it's a God, but it's not. It is simply a tool. And as one person said at one of the conferences I went to, he said, AI truly is artificial, but it's really not that intelligent. So maybe even calling it artificial intelligence is a misnomer. It's created, it's artificial, and it really doesn't think for itself. It only searches. And so there are the limits to it. Cognitive AI literacy. This becomes a very, very important part of the process. One of the things that is going to happen in AI is that you're going to get a lot of information, and the question becomes, can you assess that information? Do you know what's going on? And can you make good decisions about the information that you're going to get? I tell you what, I am going to stop sharing for just a second so I can let a few more people in. So if you guys will bear with me for a second, I am going to do that. And I am going to continue then with sharing the screen. There we go. We have several more in the waiting room and I wanted to get them in. So cognitive AI literacy, what does that mean? Cognitive AI literacy is about what you're going to do with it when you get the information. And I love this first statement. AI is no smarter than you are. And I want you to think about that for a minute, right? AI is no smarter than you are. If you use AI to give you information and it gives you totally incorrect information and you don't take time to think to yourself, does that make sense? Is that a reasonable answer? If you don't take time to think about the answers that it is giving you, then you're going to have incorrect information. You're the one that's going to have to challenge AI repeatedly to make sure that the information you're getting is correct. So be aware of those first responses. And that's this second point. When AI first generates a response and replies to you, when you ask it a question, it's based on a bunch of algorithms, large language models where it's been trained to think a certain way and do certain things, but it's not really applying any critical thinking. It's simply regurgitating to you the best information it's found on the web based on some parameter. It's not going to be a good answer. And I'm going to repeat that. The first answer you get from AI in any area is not going to be a good answer. It may be right in the sense of it answered the question that you asked, but it's not going to be a good answer. It's going to need to be developed. You're going to need to develop it. And that requires you to interact with AI in such a way that you can get it to give you a better response. So first thing you need to learn from this whole thing is how you respond to the first response from AI will determine how the rest of the conversation that you're having with AI will go. If you take what it says and you simply copy and paste that in, it will be clear, it will be obvious to us as professors that's what you've done in most cases. But the worst part is you actually didn't learn anything. And so as professors, that's what really bothers us is, oh man, they just copied and pasted. They didn't really learn anything. So this is not a question of if you respond to AI's first response, I want to tell you that there is a win. When you respond to AI's first response, then you begin a conversation that begins to verge on intelligence. But it's up to you to take that first step. If you accept it without question, you learn nothing. If you assess it and challenge it, now you're beginning to learn. You just read, hopefully, a book, or you've read the syllabi, you've read something about a particular subject matter, and you've gone to AI to get a little bit more information. And you read its first response and you say, wait a minute, that doesn't quite sound right. And so ask it another question. Hey, based on what you just said, how come this is the case? Or I thought this is the case. And I've got an example of this in just a minute. Challenge it, ask it, and make it go back and dig a little bit deeper. Make it explain itself. It can, but it won't do it unless you challenge it to. So work on assessing and challenging the response that you get from AI. You can only, and this is what I just said, you can only assess and challenge if you know enough from the course to know what to ask. If you haven't read anything and you're just letting AI write your paper and you haven't even looked at the course, you're going to bomb. I mean, it'll be the nicest, prettiest paper you've ever not written, but you will totally miss the point and of the question, the essay, and again, that will become obvious. So you need to know what you're trying to ask. And this is the part I love. AI will be happy to help you arrive at a better answer. My next door neighbor, believe it or not, has been doing research into quantum physics at the Planck level, things that I don't even understand. And he's been doing it for probably 8 months now and has about 70 different AI conversations that he is working on. But he continues to challenge and continue to challenge and continues to challenge his AI and asking it to help him clarify a formula or clarify something else. And the AI's response is basically, I'm having as much fun as you are. It's weird, but that's kind of the way it is. AI will be happy to help you arrive at a better answer. It's really designed to do that. So make sure that you communicate with it effectively and make sure that you're challenging the answers that you get. Here's a true-to-life example of AI's first response. I told you, don't listen to AI's first response. I asked AI to create for me a timeline from Moses to Jesus. I just want a timeline, right? Well, here's the AI overview. It says that the time period between Moses and Jesus is generally considered to be about 1,000 years. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Moses is believed to have lived in the 13th century BC, while Jesus is considered to have lived in the 1st century BC. Now, if any of you guys are good at math, you know that that's not 1,000 years. You know that's 12 to 1,300 years. But AI has done the math wrong already. We also know that Jesus didn't live in the 1st century BC. He lived in the 1st century AD. So again, 2 pieces of information wrong. they do generally get the information about Moses correct. Then it says that the period between Moses and Jesus is often referred to as the intertestamental period or 400 silent years. Depending on where you are in your studies, you know the intertestamental period is the 400 years between the end of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament. So Moses has nothing to do with the intertestamental period, but here AI is just loving to tell you all the good answers, and they're all wrong. Then we have Jesus is considered to be born around 4 BC, which actually is correct, 3 or 4 BC, but he didn't live in the first century BC. He lived in the first century AD. So it is amazing. Then at the bottom here, we do get this statement, oh, by the way, sometimes people refer to the 400 years between Old and New Testament as the intertestamental period, rather than the entire period between Moses and Jesus. No one refers to the period between Moses and Jesus as the intertestamental period. So AI is trying to cover its tracks, but folks, it's totally wrong. And if you don't go back and challenge this with follow-up questions, and you copy and paste that into one of your answers to one of your essays, not only will you fail, you'll fail more just over and over again. So realize AI is not super great at especially theological and religious research. So be wary of that as you pursue the studies, as you use AI. We're encouraging you to use it, but to use it properly. And the first step is know what you're asking and be ready to challenge AI when it gives you an answer. Think about it and challenge it. Constructive AI literacy is the next step in this. Using it to enhance your knowledge and understanding. This is one of my favorite things to do. And again, it goes back to this issue of challenging. So if we look at some of the things that help you develop AI literacy in this area, it says you can learn more effectively by asking AI good questions. We all know that. We've heard that said many times. But you need to know enough about your topic to be able to ask the questions that are informative. So learn, ask questions, and then as it says, begin testing ideas, creating new ones. You can ask AI, what if, and give it a scenario. And, based on, AI, based on the conversation that we're having and your last 3 or 4 responses about evangelism, what would happen if we took this kind of approach? And AI will come back and say, that's a really good question. Have you considered this? And have you considered this? And maybe if you did this instead, it'll talk to you and it will walk you through it. So use it to test your ideas and create new ideas. AI, what do you think if I combine this theory with this theory? Are those compatible? And AI will come back and say yes or no, like, oh, those won't work together because of some reason. So AI will work with you on that. Use AI for that constructive process. It will bring about great joy because you'll learn things you never even thought about. You've ever had that moment where you're studying and you're thinking, I wonder if what I'm studying in this class really coincides with and supports what I'm learning about this topic in another class. Go to AI and say, hey, I'm studying the documentary hypothesis, and I came across something about the priestly documents. And I'm curious, does this go with the same priestly documents I'm studying in the Torah? And AI will come back and say, well, not exactly. Well, at least we hope it will come back and say, not exactly. And it'll work through that process with you. But ask questions, test it. Again, this is the beginning of generative AI. It's not generative until you start asking it to do things and put together ideas. And this is important. Most people never master this literacy, though they use this feature of AI all the time. You have to be good at taking the information and putting it together in such a way that it is useful and informative. There's 3 ways to do that when you're trying to do this well. 1, assess the context of the information. Where is this coming from? And so it's important to use an AI that will give you references. So I personally use Perplexity. Perplexity footnotes its answers and tells you I've used these 4 core sources. So I can go look at those sources and decide if they're good sources and if they're actually dealing with the same topic that I'm dealing with. So make sure you check the context of the information that you're getting, the validity of the sources. If you're getting information about Christianity from a Muslim commentary, then you need to realize that that information is going to be skewed a certain way. Or if you're getting information about Christianity from a Catholic resource or Catholic information from a Hindu, any cross pollination, cross contamination is bad. So know where your source is, know if it's a valid source for the research that you're doing, and then assess the usefulness of the content. Sometimes AI will just pull a single sentence out of a source and it will look like it's good, but when you start looking at it in context, you realize this information isn't useful at all. Sometimes a sentence sounds good, and we see this in preaching, right? For those of you that attend churches regularly, you know that sometimes preachers will say, take a verse completely out of context. It sounds good, but it's not very useful because it's not actually what the scripture was talking about. So be aware of those things, ask those kinds of questions. And again, always verify and cite your sources. If you go and validate a source and it's from the Encyclopedia of Psychology, then make sure you write that down if you're going to quote it, or even if you're just going to reference it, write that down and say, okay, with this section, this piece of information is from this resource. Keep that in your record so that when we turn around and say, hey, this paper is really good, but I don't know where you got this information from. Did AI generate this? You could say, yes, it did, but this is the source that I went to from when it gave me the answer, and I checked it out, and it was great, so I used it. Man, we love hearing that. We don't hear it very often, but we love hearing it when that kind of affirmation is made. So check your stuff. Make sure the right information is there. Communicative, and I know I'm moving pretty fast, so I'm hoping you have a chance to kind of jot down some notes. We'll try to, again, have plenty of time at the end of this to have a discussion, I hope. We've just got a few slides left, and then we'll be able to take some questions. So hang with me right now. Communicative AI literacy, using AI to present knowledge. I've seen some great features where people have used AI to take some knowledge and reconstruct it and present it in the form of PowerPoints and other things. That's not exactly what this is talking about, but there's some really great information that you can find about this. So when you're using AI to communicate, right, you've researched it, you're trying to, now you want to use the information you have. Remember that AI responses sound human, but they're not, right? A computer generated them. So therefore, you can't simply import an information into the essay or your presentation. It's going to sound funny. And for us as professors, when we are considering whether a paper has been written completely by AI or has been overly influenced by artificial intelligence, the first thing that we go with is our gut. In other words, we go with the way this paper makes us feel. And if we read a paper, and if you've had me before, you know, when I read a paper and I'm like, there is no human being in this paper, that's because the paper was copied and pasted from AI, and it's really well written, but there's no self-reflection. There's nothing about it that sounds human. It looks human, but it doesn't sound human when you read it. And so that's what we do as professors. Many times we find AI simply because the paper sounds canned and mechanical. We take those papers, we run them through a couple of AI detectors. We look at what sentences may have been constructed by AI. And usually those algorithms for those detectors are based on whether or not the sentences have any level of personality. If they literally just look like a computer has strung them together, you can bet AI is going to be triggered. So we have lots of tools in our toolbox for detecting AI, but we start with our gut. Does this sound like this paper was written by a computer, and that's where we start the process. So you can't just import it. AI, as I said, AI will struggle to communicate your human heart and intent in its theological discourse. It will sound very academic, very, very technical, but it doesn't sound like a human. And most of our questions, if you've been in classes, some of them are very straightforward essays, but a lot of them ask you to kind of reflect on and evaluate and judge what you're learning. AI does a horrible job of doing that. So be aware that we are aware that that's a struggle for AI, and it's a great way for us to detect if it's used. So read it and ask, does this response, it's good information, how can I use this information to personally respond in this essay? When evaluating an AI response, consider its style, tone, voice, and context. Look at it. Then, when incorporating that information from AI into your paper, consider your style, tone, voice, and context. In other words, make it human. That's the key. So you can communicate well with AI, but you need to take it and make it human. And you need to synthesize it. That's my favorite word in the entire educational world. You need to synthesize it with the material from class and other readings and scripture and make your answers intelligible. So don't just copy and paste. Think about all these aspects. Critical literacy, and we are almost done with this, and then we'll take some questions. So if you've got questions, you can start thinking about them. Critical AI literacy. This is where you have to start thinking and everything else. Evaluating the sources of information is straightforward. If AI gives me an answer and I click on the source and the source says this came from, again, the Encyclopedia of Psychology or Philosophy from Stanford, wherever, great. I can look at that. I can evaluate the source. So evaluating the source of the material can be very straightforward, but evaluating the training of the AI is not. And so there is a real challenge to understanding what are the parameters that this particular artificial intelligence tool has been given in its training. Can it use the entire World Wide Web to answer questions? Does it require a certain threshold for answers to be considered valid? In other words, if it finds an answer one time in one place, will it provide that answer to you? Or does it have to find this in several places? And are the places that it's allowed to look limited to particular sources? That's why you see all these different AI tools out there like Liner or Perplexity or many others. They're trained with certain parameters that allow their information to be either more accurate or more scholarly or more popular. Just, hey, I searched on Facebook and here are the answers I found. Well, we all know the answers on Facebook and WhatsApp and all those are pretty wrong. So if you're going to, Facebook to do your research, you might find yourself in the world of hurt. So knowing that is oftentimes impossible, but you want to try to know what is going on in the AI tool that you're using. So look into that. Again, know what's going on. Is the large language model, is it using your information? Is it considering who you are as it answers your questions? Does it know you're a theology student? If it knows that, maybe as you set your parameters for your prompt, let it know what's going on. Otherwise, you're just going to get a lot of useless information. So know what's going on. Also be aware of whether or not it's sharing your information with other people. As you put these prompts and parameters into AI, it is using that information, unless it says it's not, it's using that information for other people's answers. So there is a kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more people that ask questions about something, the more the AI is going to learn about it, but it's not necessarily going to learn the right information. So be very, very careful about how it treats your information and the information of others. Also, one of the personal security concerns, if you put personal information in there, you're going to wind up having other people may have access to that. So don't be very, so please do be very careful in what the kind of information you provide to it. And of course, what are the copyright and legal concerns? Are you getting information from AI that's copywritten and that you need to make sure that you cite? You probably do. So make sure you know that. If you want AI to say you want AI to write a summary of a book, and you upload a PDF copy of that book. If that book is copywritten, you just violated copyright. So be aware of those things. There's a lot to it, a lot of concerns. So in the short version, AI is not unbiased. It has structured biases. It's been programmed a certain way. So try to know what they are. Once you pick an AI tool, research it enough to be comfortable with it. On that note, I'm going to just throw this in here. Nations University is looking at working with several other schools, Christian schools and universities, to develop a Christian tutor. It's an AI tutor that has been programmed to use the Bible and certain information, like from our syllabi, to help answer questions and work you through there. So should we be able to launch that, hopefully in early 2026, you would have access to that to be able to go in and say, hey, I'm working on MRS 431, and I'm really struggling with this concept, and can you help me figure that out? And that this tutoring AI will help walk you through the process and say, well, did you read about, the preliminary information about this topic that was in Module 1? And it will help teach you to find the answer. So we're looking forward to that, having a well-trained, Christian-based Nations University tutoring AI. So we're excited. And again, hopefully early 2026, that will come out. Takes a long time to put these things together, but we're working on it. So let me summarize some of the things as we kind of reach the end of this, and then we'll open it up to questions. We're right on schedule. That's awesome. So personal skills and traits needed to work with AI. These are things that you are going to need to understand in order to work more effectively with AI. The first one is you need to have problem-solving skills. You need to know what to ask. When you are given an essay prompt or you're trying to learn a little bit more about a topic, you need to be able to think, what is it that I need to know? What am I missing in this? Because if you just say, tell me everything there is to know about the documentary hypothesis, or tell me everything there is to know about kenotic theory or kenotic theology, or tell me everything there is to know about, the Noah's flood, the flood of the Noahic flood. You're going to get way too much information, and none of it's going to be useful. So when you write and you think about this, ask yourself, where am I struggling? What part of this am I missing? What do I understand, and what am I missing? And then style your prompt, your question to AI in such a way that the AI knows where you are. So, okay, I understand that, there's the JEDP process and documentary hypothesis. There's 4 sources, but I'm really struggling with who decided that there were 4 different documentary sources. Where did that come from, and what did they use to distinguish between those 4? AI will be able to say, oh, here's where they are, and here is what is where each one of them came from and how they were developed. There'll be some great information, and you can say, well, what's the criticism? Why I understand the Elohim, I get the Elohistic document process, I get the deuterocanonical process. I don't get the Jehovah one. What in the world? Everything is Jehovah, right? What does it mean by Jehovah as a documentary source? And he'll say, oh, glad you asked. This is what this is, and this is how it developed. So you have to keep thinking while you're using AI in order to solve the problem. So don't just stick a question in there and go with the first answer. Continue to problem solve. Ask yourself, what am I missing? And then convey that to the AI to help you solve that problem. You must be able to assess responses. Again, the same thing we've said. You're going to get a response. You need to reply intelligently to that response. And then when it gives you a reply, guess what you need to do again? You need to assess that response and say, did this move me further down the road? Do I understand this better? Or is this information not what I was asking for? And sometimes in papers, we see students, they'll have a block, clearly an AI block of text that is totally unrelated to the question we've asked. That is a big red flag for us that, hey, this person has asked some questions and just copied and pasted the responses over. And they didn't even read this one because it has nothing to do with the question. Think about those things, ask the questions, assess the responses, and don't be afraid to do that numerous times. Get multiple threads going where you're asking about one aspect of a particular theology or a particular interpretation of Scripture, and get another one going where you're asking about a different context, or it's same assignment but a different context. You're like, oh, tell me, I need to learn a little bit more about the Jewish use of the armor of God. Okay, so it can get those things going together, and then you can ask it to merge these things. Okay, in conversation one we had this, conversation two we had this. How do those go together? How do those go together? And it will provide you with ideas about how to put those together. You need to analyze. You need to say, that sounds really good, or no, there's no way that's true. And then you can say, well, what if we did this instead? And you propose a solution, a synthesis of that material. AI will come back, and my neighbor has done it. AI will come back and say, that is way better than what I proposed. So AI is smart enough to realize sometimes, hey, I missed the answer. And what you just said was smarter than what I had, and it will help you through that. So be aware of that. We've got a few more people joining us, even though we've kind of reached the end of this. But so again, think critically, continue the process. Intellectual curiosity. You must not be satisfied with the first response. That's all I can tell you. If you're like, I just want to write this paper and be done, I'm not interested at all in this topic, then AI will seem like the silver bullet, the best solution in the world, because it'll give you one answer, you get it, you type it in, you're done, you're done. You'll have a bad paper, you will not have learned anything. It'll be a waste of your time and really of mine. And if you're paying your money, don't be satisfied with just a superficial answer. Use AI to really answer your, deal with your curiosity. Let it answer questions. You're like, I know this doesn't really have anything to do with the paper I'm writing, but hey, AI, what would happen if we, what would it mean if Jesus had not been incarnate? What if he had not taken on 100% humanity and deity? What if that wasn't the case? How would that have changed the redemptive narrative? It's a huge question, but AI will do its best to give you an answer. And you go, well, that's interesting. I totally disagree with you, AI, but it was interesting to ask the question, and it might trigger something that you're interested in. So stay intellectually curious as you work through all of the aspects of artificial intelligence. Academic engagement, you must be willing to dig for answers with sources beyond AI. So that's the first thing, is you're going to get a lot of good information, but AI is not the only source you should use. If you finish a paper and the only thing you've done is asked AI questions and you've gone nowhere else, you haven't gone to EBSCO to look up books, you haven't gone to the library, you haven't gone to Google Scholar, you haven't gone to WorldCat, you haven't gone to any of those sources to look up and read more, you're going to come up short on the essay. It'll still be good, but you need to be aware that there's more to writing these papers and learning than simply what AI will provide for you. And last of all the above lead to this final point. What are you going to do with what you've learned? Again, you can copy and paste it and be done, which is a horrible use of AI, or you can use it to think creatively and ask yourself, what is happening in this text, or what is happening in this theory? How do I put that together? And when you do that, you can then present some really invaluable information, both in your essays for school, but also if you're preaching or you're teaching a class, no matter what the subject is, theological or not. Once you have the information, use it to present information well. But make sure that the information that you're presenting is accurate and it's telling people the truth. That this is what I've researched, this is what I found. I found it really interesting. I want to share that with you, and here's the information. That's awesome. So use it well, and people will be very excited about what you're doing. This is the last little point, and this is it. Thank you for your time and attention. I want to take questions here. I do have a note down here. Mac Lynn, our chancellor, sent this link to me just the other day, so I wanted to add it. This is a student guide to AI. So if you want to copy and paste that link in, what you'll find on this is the information about how students can use AI more effectively. So a lot of what we've talked about today, just with less of the theological emphasis. Um, so that's what's going on with the seminar. We've got about 10 minutes left, so which is perfect. I want to finish at a quarter till, and I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to try to answer as many of the questions here as I possibly can. Which right now there's only a couple of them, so that's good. So the first question is, and I believe everyone can see these questions. Let me see, who can see your message? Okay. Can I use AI to edit my papers and to use this edited paper as mine? I'm going to answer that. Yes, the answer is yes. You can use AI to edit your paper. I know some people are using it to even do some of their translation, but you can use AI to edit your paper. A lot of you are using Grammarly AI. There's others that are out there. AI it's everywhere, in fact. Even if you use Microsoft Word or Google Docs or something, and you are looking at the suggestions that it's giving you, hey, this would be better phrased if you did this, all that is AI. And so you can't avoid using AI in editing your paper if you edit it electronically at all. You just have to realize that when you take entire paragraphs and accept the recommendation, like this paragraph would be way better if you did this, and you say, yes, make that change, that's going to leave markers that AI detectors are going to be triggered by. So just be aware of that. That's why if someone turns in a paper and we see 50% AI, we just know, hey, that's those are just leftovers from the editing process. We're not going to beat anybody up, because normally beat anybody up or question them if it's about 50%, especially if in looking at the structure, which is what one of our tools does, looks at the structure of the paper. If it has a human structure and a human flow, even though you've hit accept changes several times, it's going to be fine. And then, yes, you turn it in at the end. It's your paper. As long as you wrote it and you just used AI to edit. Well, let me back up. If you've used AI to collect your information and you've taken that information and typed the entire paper yourself, and you've used the ideas from AI and maybe from the course material and maybe from a book you read, and you write that paper up and then you run it through an editor, and the editor makes a lot of grammatical changes and recommendations, and you accept all those, that is a perfectly legitimate use of AI, because you did the work to write the paper. It's you taking ideas and putting them together. That's all we're asking for. We're all for editing papers and using the different AI tools that are out there. So certainly, any other questions about, that? I know that's the biggest question, because a lot of you are using AI for editing, but that's perfectly fine. Just make sure you wrote the paper first. Any other questions? If you do, you can put them, just use the chat button down at the bottom, and you can post it, and it should show up so that everyone can read it, but I know I can read it, and I'll answer. Yeah, I'm in everyone right now, so it'll be there. No other questions? No other thoughts? I won't keep you if there's not. I just want you to know I'm glad you're here. I want to encourage you. This may sound a little backwards. I want to encourage you to use artificial intelligence to your advantage, but I want you to use it ethically, morally, and most importantly, as a good Christian. Research with it. Use it to research. I've done that. Like I said, I was working on the timeline. You ask it questions. Uh, just do what you can and make sure that it's right. Someone asked, can you take us through referencing? I can't take you through it because this really isn't a how-to, but I will tell you if your AI is, well, I will say this. Okay, I'm glad you asked that question. If you, uh, if you don't want to say, we don't want you to say, and we will not accept, I got this answer from artificial and from ChatGPT. That's not really a reference. If you're going to reference something, if AI or whatever tool you've used gives you a source, you reference it just like you would any other APA style. So if for my case, Perplexity says this information came from Catholic Encyclopedia, and I click on it and I read it, and I'm like, this is great information. I'm going to quote this in my paper, or I'm going to use some of this for my paper. Then what I'll do is I'll use that information and I'll put a parenthetical reference on there, Catholic Encyclopedia. And then that way I know where it's from. So it's still cited the exact same way you would anything else. But the difference is you cannot cite AI as a source. So don't say, I learned this from AI, because otherwise your entire paper is going to be, open parenthesis, AI, close parenthesis. AI is not a source. AI is a clearinghouse of information. It just pulls information together for you to look at and to use. So you need to look at the sources behind it. So if you're using an AI tool that does not provide you with the source of its information, you need to stop using it and you need to get a new one. Again, there are several out there. Some are free, some are paid, some have combinations, but find one that when it gives you an answer, that it will actually tell you where the source is from. And usually it's right on the very end of it. You can just look at it and say, oh, here it is. I'm going to see if I can pull up an example very quickly. Hold on. Too many things going on with it. All right, I'm going to share this real quick. We got another question. I'll answer that. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. This references Wikipedia, which I don't recommend at all. In fact, I have a video on how to and how not to. But I asked the question, what is the capital of Canada? That was the question I asked. For those of you in Canada, you're thinking that should have been easy. But right here, it tells me, here are my sources. There is a reference from Wikipedia, which is a horrible source. Don't use that. And then here's a reference from the Encyclopedia Britannica on the history, facts, and maps of Ottawa. If you click on that and you go to this source and you get the information, oh, Ottawa is the capital, and it gives you information, then what you referenced in your paper is not AI, it's Encyclopedia Britannica. So you want to make sure that you're actually citing the original source that AI used in answering your question. So if this were the case and I was writing a paper about the capital of Canada, I would put parenthesis Britannica, whatever, and then Britannica, and then whatever year it is, which is most often found. Let's see, is it? Oh, I got banners in the way, but you'd find it here. So you just find the Encyclopedia Britannica online, however you do that. But that's what you're going to do. Use the source that it gives you, and use that as your reference. Let's see, how can I search on Google in a way that doesn't lead me to AI generated results? Searching on Google, what we call that is AI augmented searching. If you now go to Google and you do a search on Google, again, here I'll share my screen real quick. Well, actually, I just kind of answered your question in some way, but I'll get back over here from Google. If you get over here and say, what is the capital of Canada? See, AI's already answered the question for you right there. You don't even have to go any further. So here's the information. Here's the AI generated response. Ottawa is the Canada's capital. You could stop at this point and say, oh, I'm going to just copy this information out. Or here, there's some information. If you do that, you don't know the source. You don't know what's happening. And so you're not going to be able to provide a citation. So once you've done the search, go to the source. Well, adventures.com is probably not a great source to use, but go to the source and then read the paper and then say, oh, okay, great. So, yeah, I'm doing a paper on tourism, and it says here more than 7.5 million tourists visit Ottawa every year. So you would put that in your paper. Ottawa is the capital of Canada, and 7.3 million tourists visit the city every year. And then you would cite adventure.com as your source, just like you would use an APA style. Again, that's in your orientation guide and your study guide, so you can get that there. But that's how you avoid getting fake responses when you're just doing an actual search. Is you go in and you ask the question, here's my question, here's what I'm looking for, and now that it gave me some answers. But what a lot of people do is they just take the first thing that pops up generated by AI, copy and paste that in, and the problem is you have no idea where that came from. You don't know if it's accurate, and you didn't really do anything with that. So make sure if you're doing a search on Google or Bing or anything else, go to the sources. Don't just accept the AI generated response that comes at the top. We have a comment here by Julia. Says, what I understand is that we should use AI just as we would use a library of books to gather ideas, analyze them, and draw the most appropriate information needed. That is exactly right. My first job during college and after college was working as a reference librarian, and that's all we did. We actually had, believe it or not, we had digital resources when I was in college, even though that was 45 years ago. No, not 45, 35 years ago. And we would search them and we would get the references, and then we would use those references to find other references. And by the way, if you ever work on a thesis or a dissertation, you're continuing your program, you will spend so much of your time in the footnotes of papers and books looking at, oh man, that sounded great. I love what that writer said. Where did he get that idea from? And so you go to the footnotes or the endnotes and say, oh, he read this in this book. And you write that resource down, and then you go look at that one. It is a chain of references. And the good thing about AI is it gives you a collection of those references all together and says, go look at these. So go look at them and then analyze them and then get the information you need. So that's exactly right. That was a great analogy. It's an online library is what it is. AI can be a really good online library for you. All right, it is 1 o'clock. I am going to shut this down for the day. I really appreciate you guys being here. I'm going to try to start doing at least once a quarter some kind of webinar like this every 3 months or so, maybe more often, where we're dealing with some of the topics that may be able to help you guys with your studies. Don't forget, the PASS program does the exact same thing. They have quarterly meetings. We have faculty visit and alumni that help with questions about studying. But we really want to help you guys in your studies. And we want you to use AI well, because we want you to learn. And AI is a great tool for learning if you'll use it for learning. So thank you guys for being here. Again, I will send out a link to the webinar shortly. And again, just keep up your studies, keep up the good work, and God bless you in your work in the kingdom. Thank you guys very much for being here.